I don't know how well my live stream's going to work today, guys. I don't know if you can hear that. Surely you can, because I can't hear anything but that. It's so loud I can't even hear the new swamp cooler. Check it out. Things are cooling. Really? I don't know what keeps going on. It's dropped off about 20 degrees in here. It's still kind of warm, but yesterday it was about 92 degrees. 92 degrees out here in Georgia. About 65% humidity. And I had to do a heat treat. And when I do a heat treat, that kiln, just opening it one time at 1500 degrees is enough to raise it about 10 degrees up. And then it never comes back down because it gets so hot. Well, I had to do 80 V2 and Nitro V yesterday, so I had to open the kiln a couple of times at 2000 degrees. And it got way too hot yesterday, and I even left early. Plus, this was supposed to... What's up, Steven? How's it going, bud? This was supposed to be here today anyway. Yes, like I said, yesterday was about 92 degrees, and it was hot before I even heat treated. And then I did the heat treat, and it kind of ruined the rest of the day. So I didn't go live, obviously. But I keep losing the live stream. I'm going to assume it's because it's raining cats and dogs outside. The phone might have melted. Man, it was so hot yesterday, I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand it. It's pouring. It's raining hard enough that I can't hear this little swamp cooler, and this thing's relatively noisy. It doesn't bother me because it's doing a job. But this rain, and it leaks. The roof leaks. I gotta keep a bucket under that roof tile over there. Look at it. Something moved. Now the floor's wet. So there's a hole up in the roof. Might not be able to see it. Right. Oh, come on now. There, see it? I gotta get up on the roof when it's not 1,000,000 degrees. I don't even know how to adjust for that. There. You can see it. It rained hard for a minute there. It's kind of starting to cool off. I mean, it's definitely cooled the roof off. Yeah. It drips pretty good in there. That's why I had the roof tile taken out. But it'll buff. It never gets so bad. Usually, I'll have to put a second bucket in there if it rains that bad. Anyway, we already got more people in this one than we did in the last one that I had like 10 minutes ago. That one quit. As soon as it started pouring down rain, it just quit. Everybody dropped off. So I don't know if storm's got something to do with that, but it hasn't rained at all today. And I'm about 25 miles south of where Mrs. is working today. And no, dude, if anything drips in here anywhere, I make a good note of that, and I keep all the blades away from that. Because I have had roof leaks, or like in the last shop, if you remember the fan that was in the wall, when it rained hard enough, it would just blow right through that fan, and I had a bench sitting right there, and I'd come out sometime, like the first few weeks of working in there, before I moved it. I went out there after a rain, and all the ADC RV2 that I had just finished ground was damp and rusted. It's like, all right, that's not gonna work. All right, so I'm rough grinding right now, but I'm gonna move on to finish grind. We're just gonna go ahead and work all the way through all of these blades that I've got sitting here. And I've got a flat ground first strike to do in Nitro V, then I've got 3 regular hollow grind Nitro V first strikes to do. I'm trying to get caught up on all my Cerakote, because tomorrow I'm going to Cerakote the blades from the Lamia order, and 3 of these knives here have got to get Cerakoted. So, what's up, John? How's it going, bud? All right, guys, I'm going to start moving again. Hopefully the stream doesn't drop. A run of thinner ADCRV2 blades. That would be, yes, a run of probably the easiest one would be wasps. A big run of wasps. They're so easy. All right, let's get back to it. I will appreciate a run of thinner ADCRV2 after grinding these Nitro V. I can't stand grinding Nitro V because they're so hard. And it just takes a while. I have to be patient. I can't just burn through them. Let's go again. 3 and 1 belt down. That, what's up, Aries EDC? My pusher is it's a file, it's a Farrier file. This one's pretty old. I really haven't gone through a whole bunch of them in the time that I've been making knives, because, I mean, honestly, they'll last so long. I've been using the same one since before the start of Very Good Knife Company, and looking at those old videos, you'd see that this thing is a lot newer looking. And I mean, obviously I use it to push, and these just, they last so long and they give a little bit of grip, but eventually you'll end up wearing that out. But I always use it to scrub the belt like a brand new belt. You know what I'm talking about, man. When you get a brand new belt on, a lot of that grit will come off and get into your face, and it'll come off whether you stick it up to a brand new knife or this. Either way, I just like to get the majority of that loose grit off with this. So I'll always scrub it and just kind of condition the belt. And then, especially with the more coarse grit belts up to like 60 and 120, the edges of the belt will be a little frayed or uneven. They're always cut straight, but there's always these fibers hanging off like this. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter what you do, you're still gonna get that spray, but it's not twice as bad as it needs to be if you just use your sacrificial pusher, because I mean, you know what I'm talking about. This stuff gets everywhere. If there's anything that ever gets in my eyes more, it's the belt grit and not the pieces of metal, because they just kind of go everywhere. But anyway, I always turn the machine on, give it a little scrub, and then I use the corners of the belt. See all that junk coming off of there? Like that. And of course you can see down inside of there, all those little white fibers, all that just came from this one belt on the edges. And it's imperative to condition every belt for getting your grinds right. Sometimes you'll have a belt that is a little more square on one side and a little more round on the other, kind of like this one. That doesn't bother me usually until it's noticeable, like really badly noticeable. You'll get one plunge that's really nice and clean, round. Then you'll get another plunge that's kind of faded, not as square. And even still, when you condition your belts, you're going to get that. It's important to me as I go up in grit that each belt is better than the last. So if I'm starting out with like a really crappy looking 36 grit belt, honestly, a lot of them will get pushed to the side, and I'll pick the best ones out. And I'll save those, the not super pretty edged ones, for doing these kind of plunge lines, the sweeping plunge like the Revelation. Because here it doesn't matter as much. I just need to get it roughed in. And this one has that long sweeping plunge, so I'm not too focused on what it looks like. I mean, right down at the grind. But definitely pick your belts, and I wish I could say that there was a magic belt out there. There's not. I've tried all the good ones. I will say this: I had less issues with the edges of the Norton Blaze belts than I have with the combat belts. However, finding a good dealer for the Norton Blaze and getting them under $9.50 a piece, yeah, that's become a thing of the past to me. So I do like the Combat shredders, but they're not as good as the Kling Sport or the Norton. However, they're $8 a piece as opposed to $10 a piece. And when you go through so many, it makes a difference for sure. It's not that big of a deal until I get up into like the 60s and 120s. If those belts suck, and those belts right there are the correctors to me. They'll clean up any kind of issues you have with the edges and plunges from the 36s. But if your 60s and 120s are really, if they're crappy, then you're gonna have a hard time getting past what it looked like before them. And they are a good price as they go down in grit. The more coarse they are, the more expensive they are. So, got us another brand new belt on. Getting 3 knives, 3 adventure-sized knives out of a 36 grit belt. These are Nitro V as well, hardened Nitro V. Getting 3 of them out of a belt like that is satisfying. I'm happy with that. You see a little bit of that surface rust discoloration. That comes from the water that I'm dunking them in. They've all got that kind of ugly sheen to them. So I'm just dunking them, and it's not helping. See, one side looks a little better too. That's the side that I had the pusher up against. But I'm getting 3 full flat grinds on 3/16, about 62.5 Rockwell Nitro V. I'm happy with that. I would like to get 5 or 6 of them, of course, but certainly not going to push it. So this belt is all squared up and clean. Sometimes you still get these little dudes, and those get in my way more than anything because sometimes they won't just come off. Sometimes they'll just kind of push in and melt to the edge of the belt, and they won't let go. And what'll happen is they'll keep you from getting all the way back to the plunge that you wanted to get to. Sometimes they'll keep you from getting to that spot that you want. But again, the 36 grit is as rough as a finish as we can get. That's brand new rough. We've got one first strike here, just one, that has got to be flat grounds full of that. It's probably going to eat this whole belt off. Most likely. All right. All that belt grit, this is what I'm talking about. It's everywhere right now. Eventually it'll quit. Oh, that's not a beginner. Come on now. right here we got an angle forward. You kind of see, that's because of this guard. This flat. I'm gonna put What's up, Rock Lobster? Brian. So there's a full flat, or a high saber flat with a swedge. And I spent a little more time on this swedge because this guy actually wants his sharpened. So I went just a little thinner than I usually go. Let's see, everything looks good. Good looking knife. As predicted, this 36 grit belt is done. That one only did one, but to be fair, there's a full 2 of these grinds. There's 2 of these knives and 1 of this pretty good size blade. And the continuous grinding on these belts will wear them out even faster too. So like if you have 4 or 5 of the really smaller knives, as long as you're not hammering into them the same amount of time as you are that first strike, even if there's more surface area to grind, the belt will last a little longer. But when you're doing a big grind like this, it'll just absolutely destroy the belt. But yes, these are Nitro V first strikes. There's 4 of them here, and then I've got 1 in ADCR V2. This guy is going to be a Gen 3. This one's going to be a Gen 3. And then there's 1 more Gen 3 here as well. And then I actually did, yesterday I had to heat treat. I did 2 more first strikes in Nitro V, along with some more ADCR V2. But dude wants a copy of Gabe's, but he wants Nitro V. Gabe's first strike, but he wants Nitro V. All right, so let's get. I'm gonna get rid of this. Actually, I'm not even gonna switch. We're just gonna stay right here for now. I am going to get rid of the 60 grit step for all of these ones that I just did, because that is all that I need to get through for the minute. So I'm going to go 36 and then 60 on our flat grinds here. So I'm going to do these adventures, and these I really don't have a whole lot to take off. We're just going to try and uniform up those 36 grit grinds just a little more. It just makes the 120 step go a little smoother too. But the 60 grit is the last of the super rough. After their 60 grit finish, then we'll finish the sides on the surface grinder, and then we'll move to the open platen one with no rest, and I'll finish the bevels. The Gen 3s are only going to get finished to 220, and then we'll finish everything else to a normal 400. Stuff go. So I do the same thing with the 60 grit belts. I give them a scrub and a clean up on the edges, because you can kind of see these edges are nice and frayed. Now the 60 grit, pretty much everything above the 36, 24 and 36 grit are cut a little smoother, but they still need to be cleaned. What's up, Jacob Ivy? So, we're just going to raise that grind line almost all the way up, because again, we're going to cut this back one more time. Make sure our edges are a little closer and everything's uniform. So with the 60 grit, you can really see that that plunge grind is a lot more uniform. It still needs a little cleanup, but as we go up, it'll clean up a little more and a little more. Hey Jared, do me a favor and shoot me an email, verygoodknifeco@gmail.com, or if you want something that I do have in the store, you can go to verygoodknifeco.com. I usually do drops, but I'm a little behind on orders after Blade Show. I am almost caught up, and then I'll be doing drops as normal. But if you just find something that you can't live without, shoot me an email, verygoodknifeco@gmail.com. We'll talk. I'll get you hooked up. Good looking. Nice and clean. Good distal taper. Good even edge. What we're looking for. One more adventure here. Last adventure. Clean. Good and straight. Good and even. Alright, got that first strike. Go. That's all the adventures and the flat grinds. It's all the flat grinds. So this one we're shaping up to what's up, buddy? This one we're shaping up to sharpen the swedge. That's not a normal thing. I've done it on several of them, but it's not too normal. I don't do it a whole lot. See, I got a little bit of a rash right there. Nothing that I can't get out. That'll disappear in the next step. But this is a first strike Nitro V with a high saber flat grind, and we're thinning out that swedge so it'll be so it can get sharpened at the end, because that's what he wants. All right, so that's all we got for the flat grinds. Now we got to do some hollow grinding. My least favorite thing to do with the first strike Nitro V. I normally would rather hollow grind them, but remember I was telling you that when you go long-term or long-distance grinds on hardened steel with those 36 grit belts, they wear out real fast. Yeah, these things will eat They might eat a belt apiece just doing the hollow grind. I don't know why I lose more. I guess I'm able to put a little bit more pressure into it, but I mean, still, that it doesn't sound right to me. It doesn't seem right. But anyway, that 36 grit belt that this one just used up, I feel like I could use it for another one. Not another one of these, but at least one more knife. But for whatever reason, these things eat the belts up on that wheel. No worries, we're gonna do it anyway because that's what we got to do. The job is the job. Well, we've got 3 of them to do. I'm gonna get rid of the vacuum chute. Put in the dust bucket. I only do this for rough grinding. Finish grinding. Any kind of grinding where we're getting a whole bunch of sparks. I don't want all those sparks to. I don't want all that metal dust to coagulate inside the hoses, and it'll end up burning my vacuum hoses. I've already done it. They're not all that expensive, but I just don't want to be spending all my time replacing vacuum hoses. So that's 4 of 8. Now let's get the other 4. Well, one of them actually is rough ground. So the ADC RV2 gets rough ground before heat treat. This one is rough ground. It's got 120 finish on the side, just like all the other ones. This one will take through the 60 grit once we get to that point, get it where it needs to be, and then it'll be caught up with all the others. But for now, 36 grit on these hollow grind first strikes, which is standard. Going crazy. See all the stuff that comes off of that belt? See all that junk? All the thread? Now, I don't care that the belt edges are the most square and perfect. I just care that both sides are even. Not sure exactly how long that took. What's up, Gabe? I'm not sure exactly how long that took, but it's got me shaking, like, because the hollow grind Nitro V first strike is one of the more challenging grinds that I do, because it doesn't bite in fast and they don't cut fast. They cut extremely slow because they're hard. I have no rest platen like I do, so I can't do majority of it. I can't do the majority of the roughing in with the rest and the pusher. You just have to go at it. So I mean, this one's got me shaking and wore out. Could just be that it's 4 o'clock, but it's physically demanding. And that belt is already trash. I mean, this is the first knife that I touched with that belt, and it's already trash. It's not trash to the point of burning it. I could grind some ADC RV2 with it, but I won't grind any more Nitro V because it's gotten to the point where it's not cutting, and I'll have to start pushing in and risking burning, and it ain't worth all that. So it looks good, but I have 3 more of these to do. Oh, that scares me. I have no complaints, but I am happy that I have not had to do a whole bunch of these in recent years. I just haven't, and I won't complain still. It'll be really nice when they're water jet and I don't have to do this whole extravagant with the guards and everything. Getting it all hand blanked is kind of a pain. I don't know, it kind of changes the mentality of the whole knife when you have to cut one out anyway. But flat grinding, you can see, went way easier. Honestly, it went easier, and it's more complicated looking. To me, it is. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But I would rather flat grind them. Even though they eat up the belts the same way, I'd still rather flat grind them. This is exhausting. Alright, so that's 6. Now we've got 2 more of these guys to go. 2 more belts to learn. So let's do it then. Oh, I still got some energy. I'm not going to be able to lift my arms tonight. I have not hollow ground a Nitro V first strike in a good while. In fact, 90% of the first strike orders that have come in, they want them like Gabe's or PBKG's. Flat ground. Nice saber flat. Thanks, bud. They are some sweet blades, aren't they? They're so satisfying when they're done. Not the most fun to grind, but it doesn't bother me. That's the job. I love the way they look. They are just so good looking. So satisfying when they're done. Rewarding. I don't know, honestly, which one that I'm more partial to. I think the hollow grind, I don't know. At one minute I think it looks better, and then the next minute I don't think it looks better. But I don't know. I think the Gabe configuration, the high saber flat grind, it's just, I don't know that it looks better. It looks maybe a little cleaner with less cheek. That just depends on what you are into. I like the big cheek. I think this one would look better. The hollow grind version would look better if I did a fuller. I need one with a fuller. I need to get me a mill so I can mill in some fullers. Then this one, then we'd be contending. But without the fuller, I think the flat grind takes the edge on looks. I just do. And not only that, but the flat grind takes, it definitely steps up the versatility. Not that I wouldn't do it with a flat or a hollow grind. Some outdoor analysts he loves his hollow grind first strike. He does all kinds of stuff with it, and I would too. It's not that I don't trust it, just the idea of a high saber flat grind. It's definitely more. It's going to be more abuse resistant and tolerant. So it just would do more things a little bit more smoothly than the hollow grind, which changes it from a single purpose blade to more of that survival blade category, which for me, that steps the appeal of a knife up for sure. If you're not just saving it for that one random time that you might get to go run out the door with your plate carrier and your AR-15, when you could just take it out into the woods and play with it. Oh, you can do that with both of them. All right, let's get this other one going. Other two, we got two more going here. There. Hopefully I didn't lose anything. All right, next, hollow ground, first strike. Number 2 here. Let's get another one going. All right. Wear ourselves out round 2. See how much faster it goes when the belt's fresh? slower it goes, that belt wears out so fast. Oh shit. Huh. right, so this one kind of frustrated me. Ow, fucker. Ow. Excuse me. That band just slapped the hell out of me. Alright, so this one I'll have to bounce back on that 120. It's not really cut, it's just scuffed through the thing there. But you can see that the plunges are a little off. And that's because the belt edges, and I'll even show you what it looks like. Those belt edges, I told you I like them even. These ones seemed even to start with, so this side is perfect. That's exactly the way I like to see them. They're square, but what that tells me is that was the end of the roll. That was not the beginning of the roll, because they're never cut that clean ever. But then this side is a little more round. So when they do that, it's almost impossible to get the plunges exactly the way that they need to be. The best way for me to go about this now is to abandon it right there and jump back to jump to a 60 grit, which is what the next step is going to be anyway. But instead of trying to force it, see, as I was trying to force it and get it to float in exactly the way I wanted, I ended up jumping off outside of that plunge. Everything looks good. It's just slightly, this one's slightly forward. And it's actually, that's the way I want it to look, is square. Not perfectly square, but square, round. This one has got more of a taper out fade. Not a big deal. This one had me shaking really bad though. Just a fatigue shake. I'm having to put a whole lot of pressure into these, and they're just, I don't know what it is. Well, I know what it is. The hardness. I don't like the hardness. But I guess suspending out there on that hollow grind wheel is a little different. So this one is going to be just like that last belt. This one's got a nice, beautiful square edge on this side, and this one is not as pretty. However, this one is not as ugly as the other one. I really couldn't tell until I started grinding on this one. But one of the biggest giveaways is some of these little chunks missing. See these little chunks missing? I missed that, no big deal. Sometimes nothing you can do about it. If that's all the belts that you've got, and that's what you grind with, and you just deal with it. But this one probably be about the same, maybe a little better. This actually looks a little better, a little more even. A lot of times I'll just sit here and go through my belts over and over. Here's another example of that double round edge. See, you can see a little bit of white on both sides, or you can't really on this side. This one's red all the way to the edge. This one's got that little white strip. Those are the things that I look for. So I'll take the one that doesn't look perfect, like the white on both sides, because I got a better chance of it cleaning up and being even rather than the other one. The other ones will still get used. I'll just use them for something that is not as big. I'll just use them for like, I'll use them for things like this, because these are easier to correct. You're not working on that giant grind. You're not working on all of this, and you really only need that corner of the belt for this down here. But it's tough to focus on everything at once. That's why you gotta have a little, real gentle touch with things. But so that's two hollow ground. Pain in the necks. Yeah, this one will have to go. I mean, hell, you can even see the other side of that belt was so square and so good that this has actually got a hook. Can you see the hook? It's kind of hard to see, but it does this number. It comes back up. So it was actually biting in and going, cutting inward without You can see that hook there. And that'll come out. I mean, all you got to really do is touch it to another belt and it's gone. But, yeah, you can see the difference between the edges of the belt just in this one grind right here. This side is a softer edge, less square cut. This one is a whole perfect square cut edge belt. Now, I never really had that much of an issue with that kind of thing with the more expensive belts, so it's left me wondering for the years that I've been using combat belts if I should just go right back to those. Again, if I can find a good dealer. It's not that I'm crazy about combat either. Out of all of my suppliers for materials and tools and stuff, I have the least best relationship with them. I just don't think that they really care too much about their customers, so I do anticipate changing belts. Changing suppliers. I like to have a good personal relationship with everyone. Not because I want a discount, but I mean, we're all here helping each other out. Like I have a good relationship with New Jersey Steel Baron, Maker Material Supply. Shout out to them. But then, again, I have their banners hanging up on all these live streams too. So, and I was supporting and promoting them before all those banners. Good relationships aren't always about getting the best deals. It's just about having somebody nice to talk to and knowing that if I ever need anything, like next week, I don't know that Combat will ever do it for me. But I know for a fact, if I needed something tomorrow, Aaron would get it to me. I know for a fact. Same with New Jersey Steel Baron. If I need something from them and it's just something that I gotta have like right now, and maybe it's something that I have to call them for, they'll help me out with that. All right. I'm just rambling and avoiding grinding this last one. I don't want to do it. I just don't want to do it. Here we go. Here we go. See how fast it goes when they're fresh? Oh, it's so fast. arms are dead. go. All right, guys. Good timing. I just finished rough grinding the last first strike that I have over here. Now, they'll have to go through 60 grit before we go back to the surface grinder. But, there's our hollow grinds. Pretty good looking, right? And good timing because the oven over here just beeped. You might have heard that. The oven just beeped. And in that oven, there it is. You hush. That is the last cycle for these two. First strikes, Nitro V. So, it was over. It's not over anymore. Those are going to have to cool off, and they'll have to go through the surface grinder before I'm ready to catch them up. I'm not too worried about them. Only one of them is in order, but I needed a buddy. Got to have a buddy blade. So you can guess that extra that I've got in there is not going to be hollow ground, because the one that's in order is a flat grind. High Saber flat grind like Gabe's. Bronze, Gen 3 with the green handles. And it's not going to be hollow grind. It's going to be a flat grind. So that'll be nice. All right, so now I've got to stick a 60 grit belt on. I'm actually going to stick the same one that I used for the Adventures and that other first strike, because it didn't get much use. And it should be able to make it through the rest of these without issue. Now we've got that one little goofy plunge to fix. Let's see. Do that first. My fingers are, the tips of my fingers are numb from grinding those. And I really just don't like grinding, hollow grinding Nitro V. Is not fun. Flat grinding is not the most fun either, but I don't like hollow grinding Nitro V. Let's hit these with the 60 grit real quick. Start with that HCRB2 blade. that looks like. We'll let it cool because I really don't want to get it wet. I don't want it to start rusting. Then I'll do that flash here in just a minute. Nice, even plunge. Got her fixed now. Set that down to the rest of them. Do the switches for once I've done the rest. Save some belt. pretty. This is the one that was goofy. Here's what it looked like before. Ground the goof out of that one. Now we'll do all the sledging. Finish on one of them, sledge and all, centered, nice and straight. One, Pretty purty. Hell they all are, I guess. One more. There we have all of our rough grinding for the day. Now we got to finish grinding. Not quite. Well, I don't even know. Let's see. All right. Now, let's go ahead and we'll just keep it rolling. Hell with it. I'm just going to keep on going until I don't have it in me anymore. I at least need to get this first strike done so I can oil it up, put it away. This 80 CRV2 one. Duh. Just did 5 first strikes. Like, which one, dude? So, I won't be grinding those 2 that I pulled out of the oven this week, because that'll be a next week thing. I'm not even sure that everything I got sitting here is going to get finished, but I really need to try and get through. I need to finish the ones that are going to get Cerakoted. Let me go and take a look at that right quick, because those are the most important ones. I have to Cerakote tomorrow, and I need the buddies, all of the ones that are going to be black done. So, I'll see. One of those first strikes, one of those with the hollow grind, is going to get it's going to get burgundy and black. So that's that one I need to get finished. And these only had to get finished at 220, so these will be finished faster. Now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here that are going to have to get full finish. So it looks like, no, not that one. I just put that one up yesterday. That one. Connor Mash. Let's see. Let's get those three. Let's get those three finished ground for today, and that'll probably take up the rest of the day. That'll get me through that. That'll get me through the shit. What am I trying to say? Get me through that 80 CRV2 one. So I don't want that one sitting there rusting. I need that one done and oiled up so I can be rid of the thought of it having to be refinished again. So let's run. Start with Connor's here. Connor Mash is a big time VGKC supporter, and he actually came by and saw us at Blade Show too. He bought a couple of knives, and he had one on order before Blade Show, and this is it. It's the first strike, the one that's flat ground, and his is going to be Gen 3 black, and he's getting some Python micarta. I do have a small sheet of that Python, so I'll do more of it. I don't know how much I'll continue to do, because the place that I'm having to get it is not my favorite people. Not that I'm anti or won't support them. There's other places that I already have chosen to support. But as far as I know, they're the only ones that have this Python micarta for now. Took you guys back here a little way so you can see me. There you go. And that's the final finish for the sides of this one, 220. Finish on that one. Gonna bring you guys over with me. I'm gonna get this acetone off right quick. One could say that trying to make yourself look better and belittle others on the internet is overcompensating, but you know. Grab towel, paper towel. I gotta get this acetone off. This layout dye will get into the glue the blue, it'll get into the belt and it won't come out. And it just kind of smushes and rubs into everything, and kind of like this guy. Chill out now, mama. He'll never make no points to those that don't care to hear them. But stick around, you might learn something today. Alright. Usually have a dunk tank to just dunk them in and clean the acetone off, but I haven't learned, I'm just tired of looking at you, honestly. I'm just tired of looking at you. Goodbye. I don't even care. I don't care what you're here for. We don't play like that here. So, have a good one, buddy. I'm working. Like actual on the clock working, so I really just don't have time to even have you in my mind. There's no space for you in my mind. I don't even want to see you. Okay, now we're clean. We can take these guys back over there to the grinder, finish without getting layout dye all up in our belt. Because believe it or not, that little bit of layout dye will ruin a belt really quickly. I don't understand why it clings so bad, but I don't know. Well, I mean, you know, people don't know how to joke anymore. They don't know what a joke is, or even really humor. People have lost a sense of humor. I don't know. Like I said, I don't care. I'm working, busy, don't care. I don't care. Let's run it. This live stream's done got late. Funny. couple more. As well. One half belt out. And we'll do it. That nice 220 finish. And see, we brought the cheek down with that belt. We'll end up taking it right back up with that 120. But that's why I want it a little higher than what it needs to be with the 60 grit. Because the 220 and the 400 is just going to bring it right back down. One more, then we'll swap 400. Usually this is a good indicator of where my grind lies as well. If it's not ground up high as I want it in the midsection, you'll notice that this line comes out running longer. And sometimes, oh, I got the wrong side. See this side, it dips a little right in here. And that just tells me that my distal taper isn't as long and as clean as it needs to be. However, doing this step is essentially just giving me a guide to work off of. Because at the end, I want my grind to have that nice curvature and just the tiniest little bit of cheeks. I don't really want to break the spine. And that lets me know that my grind line is even all the way out, and that distal taper won't have any long steps in it. You'll see everything is nice and even. Just an interesting little guide. Now we're going to switch to a 400 grit. That'll be the last step for a few of these sitting here. Not all of them are going to get the 400 grit, because some of them, ouch. That belt just cut the hell out of me. Yeah. I don't know. I didn't see it. I don't know. Hold on. Damn it. That hurt. No sharpness to the belt. That's just the grit, the edge of the belt. It just hung up in my... Ouch. Damn. All right. What did... Okay. Let's run it. 400 grit, the last finish for all three get 400 grit. There's that 400 beauty finish. Pretty nice. One more first track adventure. Another one. Nice and shiny, right? Super shiny. Shiny as any. Adventure. Now, let's have a little flip around. We'll go to back to the hollow grind wheel and pull out a 120. Grab us a 120 grit belt, get rid of that 60. Now that 60 didn't get used a whole bunch, but it did get used enough. It might not have a whole lot of sharpness to it. So I'll probably end up using that for a handle grinding belt, a material grinding belt. All right. For blade. Wait to do the sledges until they're all done. one at a time switches. One side at a time. That 120 on that. I had to grind this swedge a little thinner. No, that one's not the right one. This one. Never mind. Alright. That's all for those 120. Now I'll jump to that 220. I was thinking that it was one of those hollow grinds, and it's the flat grind one that gets the sharpened footage. Show you that here in a second. Wrong button. That's the final finish for this one. It's going to get Cerakoted. Go. Still got to do the swing. Hollow grind. 220 for the hollow grind. Got one more grit to go up. Where'd that go? Maybe I did not even pull it out. I thought I did. Well, no matter. I'm gonna drop the speed down one to about 800 RPM. Slow. My normal speed is about 1760, so still pretty slow. But that's about half the speed. We're just gonna do the last two that I did. I don't want a 400 grit finish if I'm going to blast it in Cerakote. Too slick. There's 400. That's 220. That's 400. 29. Go. All but the sledge. Get that in a second. Do the main grind first. Beautiful. All right, grab the sledges. Go. Beauty. Beauty. Little run over, but a lot of that's going to grind off. And then when we hit it with the Scotch-Brite, you won't notice it. About drop down. Go. Sit for hollow grind. No more hollow grind. Now we got to get the bump the belt speed back up. Remove that. 400. I'm gonna go back to that 120, and then I'm gonna switch to the free plat. Go back to full speed, run these last 4. Thought you guys would like that. Good old trick. Hold the tensioner bar down and then start it. It runs away. Get light, get hard. clean. One more for this step. one. Alright, one more swing. One more swing. Not yet. There's that sledge. I gotta do these. Shoulder campers on this. Almost got it. Now, this first strike has got one more step to go on this 220, and then it'll be finished. And then we've got to go 220 and 400 on these adventures. We'll be done. Done for today, anyway. Good looking. Now, that guy's done. That's just a little belt rollover. It didn't change the line, so it'll blast off. This one's getting Cerakoted. Alright. 220 before my phone goes dead. On those adventures. It's right here, buddy. That's funny, you just popped in. It's in my hand. This one I marked with that little dimple, so I could tell that it was the wider one. See, the belly is about, it's a little more than a 1/16 inch wider. It's got one more step, and then tomorrow I'll be finishing it up. Pop in right side. That was the one that I just finished. other adventures are on the board for today. Getting blade work done, and that way I get them wrapped up tomorrow. I'm trying to get them finished. Now, I don't think it'll be ready to send tomorrow, but we might send you an invoice tomorrow. It will be a finished knife tomorrow. It'll be done, but I might be doing the sheath on Sunday or Monday. Oh, too fast. Gotta drop that speed down. All right, last step on your adventure, and that's 400 grams. Go. What'd you think, bud? Does that look satisfactory? Pretty good looking blade. Right now it's got 400 grit finish. Of course, it'll get blasted. And if I'm coating them, I'll leave them either 120 or 220. That way it has a look. But the 400 grit will look really nice and uniform blasted. It'll have a nice light blast finish to it. It's going to be a pretty one. One more. Yes, sir, I'll blast the whole thing. And that micarta will have a really nice texture to it too. One more step, got to get these shoulders. One, two, really, like that. Finished blade. Finished blade. Finished blade. There we have it. Aggressive grinding indeed. Thanks, Waleska knife. All right, that's yours right there, Tim. That one that's got the little dot. All right, so now, Zach Schmidt, I'm not sure if you're in here, buddy, but usually you are, and sometimes you come back and watch it, but this one's yours. This one's getting finished up tomorrow as well. And then I don't remember the name of the fella that's got the other one. Oh yeah. You weren't the one. Tim wasn't the one that was getting the wider belly. Tim was the one that was getting the regular adventure with the bead blast. The one with the wider belly is the one that was supposed to get the leather saddle and the blue. So, either way, same blade. Yours is here. This one's the regular blade. This dude requested a wider blade. Some people do, and it's not a whole lot of difference either, because the steel that I cut them out of, these take up just about all of it anyway. But you can see it is about a little more than a 16th inch longer and about a 16th inch wider. Well, a little wider and longer blade, just marginally. But Tim, you're on here. Zach, you're on here, and I don't remember the other feller's name. And then we've got Connor Mash with that Gen 3 first strike. We've got Florens has got, this is the ADC RV2 one. He's got one of these and one of these. Not that one of these. The only difference, the reason why I say that is because some of them have different holes. The Gen 3 use the Gulso bolts. Those have a smaller post for the 3/16 holes. That's what the Gulso bolts go in, is the 3/16 holes. And then the regular Corby screws will get a 7/32 hole, which is a little different. But anyway, Florens wanted a Gen 3 first strike ADC RV2, and then a Gen 2 Nitro V first strike. So he'll have one that's coated, the carbon one that's coated, and then he'll have one that's a shiny one. So he wants one of each. Yes, sir. Turning and burning, buddy. I got a bunch of damn first strikes. Look at all the first strikes. And I sent one out this week that I finished up. Plus, I just heat treated 2 more yesterday, because I had hell, you may have heard from him, but he's I think he's one of your subs, Gabe. He wants an exact copy of your knife, Gen 3, but he wants Nitro V, so that's what I got here. And then and I just made an extra. I'm actually gonna make 2 of those. I'm gonna make another one, mainly because I need a buddy for Cerakote. I have let's see, 1, 2, 3 of those blades, 3 of those first strikes that I just finished right now are getting Cerakoted. All 3 of them are getting Cerakoted black. And then I've got 4 more blades from the Lamnia order here. 4 more blades right there. Those are getting Cerakoted, and they're getting Cerakoted black. So I have not mentioned the Counter-Strike yet. I have one more run ahead of it, and it is that small single run of Zach's blade. I don't know how many I'm gonna do. Probably just one billet of them, but I'm working on them now. I'm not gonna show it yet. I'm so excited about it. I really am. I can't wait for that one, because that's one that I want to carry to Counter-Strike. Gabe's talking about the Counter-Strike, and Gabe, he's going to be the first to have one of those. Gabe gets a lot of firsts, doesn't he? You know what? That's because he asked. He's not afraid to ask. The dumbest question you ever ask is one you don't ask. The dumbest question ever is the dumbest is one. Never mind. Shit fire. You guys get what I'm trying to say. Anyway, I've been trying to get all these, all the ones that are getting Cerakoted black out of my way, because I've got a Cerakote tomorrow. Tomorrow's Cerakote day. Before I do Cerakote, though, I will be fitting up and finishing the handles on the ones that are getting Cerakoted. So there's 2 Nitro V ones and an ADC RV2. The one of them is flat, just like yours, Gabe. But yeah, that dude, I'm pretty positive it's one of your subs. He's getting one just like this.